Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for an important discussion today with Moms with a Mic. I'm Marissa Bagg, reporter with NBC6, and right next to me is my sister and fellow colleague at NBC6, reporter Julia Bagg. We are excited about our discussion today. Very important talk to be having, not just here in South Florida, but across the country regarding school safety in school for children when it comes to active shooters. And we have some very prestigious people joining us today to facilitate this conversation. Let's go ahead and bring them in. I'll introduce them. First, we have a teacher, Eric Garner. He teaches at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland. He was also there the day of the shooting back in 2018. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us today. It's really great to see you, and we look forward to this discussion.
Great. Yeah, and full disclosure, Eric Garner was our TV teacher back at South Miami Senior High, so we're grateful to have him. Also joining us, Chief Edwin Lopez of Miami-Dade Schools Police. And Chief, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you both for your time joining us for this just incredibly important discussion. As we have our kids back in school, kids heading back to school, already back in school here in South Florida and returning across the country. And so safety is top of mind, of course. And before we begin, want to show some video that's really gone viral of a mom talking to her 5-year-old, training him about shooter safety. If you take a look at this. So this mom training her 5-year-old son what to do as he heads into kindergarten. She bought him a bulletproof backpack. And maybe you all have seen this. A lot of people have seen this video. She asked some questions, what to do and what not to do here. And so this really struck a chord, I think, with a lot of people. And first, just to start things off, I'd love to get your reactions to this, both Mr. Garner and Chief Lopez. Whoever wants to chime in.
I'll let the chief start.
Well, thank you. So, listen, I sit here as the chief of police of the largest school-based police department in the country, but I'm also here as a dad. You know, I'm a father of a 6-year-old little girl, a 12-year-old boy, and anytime you see videos like that, it sends chills that we have to, or we feel the need to speak to our kids at such an early age of what to do during a critical incident at school. But it's a conversation that's needed, unfortunately, whether, you're looking at the tragedies that have occurred to this country, not only in a school setting, but in a country concert in Las Vegas, at a movie theater in Aurora, Colorado, a few years back, in a supermarket in Buffalo, New York, earlier or this summer. We're living in times where the conversation, where students and kids and children involving active shooter and critical incidents has to take place. Yes, it's scary to have those conversations, but it's scarier to go into a school where there's 17 or 20 dead second or third graders. That's ultimately the most scariest thing for me, and what makes me lose sleep at night on a personal level. So yes, it's scary, but there's other alternatives that we do not want to deal with in this day and age.
And Eric, just what are your thoughts having seen that video?
Honestly, it's heartbreaking. My kids are older, and I could go through the training I've done with them, but when it comes to that video, I sat there and watched it. You kind of tear up a little bit because you don't want to think that your child could be in that scenario, but they do need to be prepared. There's nothing wrong with the video in and of itself. My bigger concern, or maybe my bigger comment, is I'm hoping mom is not making that the focus of back to school. Like, this is just one element. I think he's 5 or 6, so he's going to kindergarten. And yeah, it's important that he knows what to do if a bad guy shows up. But he also needs to know how to go to the lunchroom, how to stand in a line, when it's appropriate to raise your hand to go to the bathroom and stuff. So there's a lot of aspects just going to school that a 5-year-old does need to know. So yes, this is important. Yeah, no doubt this is important. Totally agree with the chief. But statistically speaking, he's not going to face that. You know, just general statistics say he's most likely never going to face that scenario. He'll practice for it. He'll learn. He'll train. But he's going to go to the cafeteria every day. He's going to go to art class every day. He's going to go to music class and all the other things that he needs to know the process for. So yes, he should know the process for what to do during a lockdown. But I hope she did more than that. And that doesn't make TikTok, because nobody wants to talk, you know, put the TikTok up with, hey, 5-year-old, this is how you stand in a line.
Well, and I know that obviously, and we were just talking before we started, your experience as an educator here in South Florida. You've been at Marjory Stoneman Douglas now for 15 years. You were in Miami-Dade before that, our teacher, several years before that. So I think it's also just a sign of the times. This was never a discussion we had in your class, right? I mean, and certainly never thought that this would become a discussion.
I think when we talked about it, and it was not active shooter, we didn't circle around that. It was just staying safe, because it was a broadcasting class. So you guys are going out, you're videotaping, same as my kids do today, and just knowing how to be safe and being smart and situationally aware. That was probably what I taught you guys. Since then, and really what changed a lot of my discussion in class was Columbine and what to do, you know, when an active shooter event happens. I've trained all of my kids, because they're not going to be in the classroom with me most likely. They'll be out videotaping. They'll be doing their assignments. One of them actually did what I trained him to do during our event at MSD. Went in the bathroom. He hid. The shooter came by. And at the end of the day, he should have been on the 3rd floor when everything happened up there. But because, you know, in part because of the training I had given him, he wasn't. So, you know, there's a little bit of a success story in the middle of tragedy. You know?
Right. Well, and I want to share a statistic that we found just for this year, 2022, so far. With Everytown for Gun Safety. It's a nonprofit organization that advocates for gun control and advocates against gun violence. And you can see it right there. It says, so far this year, there were at least 102 incidents of gunfire on school grounds, resulting in 41 deaths and 79 injuries nationally. Again, this is a national number. So, Chief, I want to bring you in. When you see a number like that, you know, and I know that there was a response after the Uvalde tragedy. We reported on that. There was an increase of police officers at campuses here across South Florida. Just what is happening kind of on the day-to-day to keep tabs on this and try to prevent this from happening again in our community?
Well, it's a multitude of things. It's yes, we have a police officer on every campus, but it's not only a police officer. It's a police officer that's trained in youth mental health awareness, an officer that's trained in de-escalation, in crisis intervention, in dealing with some of these students that are displaying some characteristics of mental stress or mental illness. Mental health is a huge component of our job on a daily basis. The communication that takes place between a school resource officer and the counselors and our mental health professional at schools, the threat assessments that convene after students display a certain type of characteristic or behavior, comprised of the school resource officer, the mental health professional, the teacher, a school site administrator. That's happening on a daily basis. The police command center that we have here in Miami-Dade County, that we have the ability to remotely monitor over 18,000 cameras live each and every day in our schools. It's a 24/7 operation, only one of its kind in the country. That's at that magnitude for a school district. I think that level, coupled with the amazing teachers that we had, like Mr. Garner and others, that are really spending time with these students and identifying certain characteristics and communicating with law enforcement. The police officer on school grounds is not only there to take people to jail. That's the last thing we want to do. We try to prevent and intervene and communicate to try to raise these kids together and collectively. Yes, there's been an increase in active shooter training drills that we've had. We do that so that we can communicate and share tactics with the other officers, so we learn best practices from incidents. We have Uvalde and we have Parkland to look at, the law enforcement response there, not to get into details, but it was delayed or non-existing. We're training now in law enforcement on a single person response with no delay immediately to address a threat really quick. So that just is some of the few things that are assisting in keeping our schools, what I feel in South Florida, in Miami-Dade and Broward, safest in this country.
Yeah. And Chief, we were just showing some of the images from some of those safety drills, from those active shooter drills. I actually attended one of them that you conducted at Coral Gables Senior High School. I know you guys do that periodically. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that helps you prepare to take out a threat?
Absolutely. So we assess a multitude of things during those active shooter drills. First, our communication systems to ensure that our school resource officers are able to communicate effectively with local law enforcement in terms also of our tactics that we're utilizing. We have over 30 police departments in South Florida, in Miami-Dade County specifically. We know that if we have a critical incident in Coral Gables or in Hialeah or in the city of Miami or Miami-Dade County or Miami Beach, you're going to have the Miami-Dade Schools Police Department physically there present addressing that threat, but you're also going to have an influx of police officers from other agencies. So we have to ensure that these officers are in the same mindset as we are when it comes to addressing a threat without any delay immediately. We have to also ensure that we bring in school site administrators and teachers. We know during a critical incident, teachers are just as important as law enforcement because they know these kids and they're able to make split-second decisions that can save lives, whether it's moving kids to hard corners, whether it's certain things that they have. Do they have a special needs population in the school? That would require a different type of response for certain nuances. Do the school administrators and do the police officers, are they working and communicating during critical incidents? Do the school resource officer know the classrooms in the school that are populated with special needs students? The parent reunification, what area is that within a school? We're going to have an influx of parents at the school wanting to see their kids. Are their schools safe? Are their kids safe? So we need to ensure that we have clear established guidelines of what to do during these critical incidents and who do we staff these individuals with. Our local hospitals, God forbid we have an incident, ready for the influx of potential casualties or people that have been shot, victims, to be able to handle these threats. Our police officers, and I know I'm speaking a lot, but it's a lot of things at one time. Are our police officers trained in first responder to work with firefighters and paramedics to be able to respond to the scene and render aid quickly and efficiently, knowing that our police officers are there before firefighters? Are we able to take certain measures as cops on the scene to save lives down the line? So those are things that we are assessing, things that we're training for, and things that, sadly, that we're ready to respond. It's an unfortunate time in our society. We have social media really magnifying a lot of these issues. Obviously, we looked at the video earlier of the mother on TikTok, but that goes to show you that everybody is a reporter. Every student has an iPhone or an Android and is able to communicate in real time. And many times, spread information or misinformation during a critical incident that really hinders our response. So we have to stay in front of it and train effectively.
Oh, wow. I think I want to stay with that for a moment. Actually, that's interesting that spreading misinformation that can hinder a response. Is there something perhaps that students should know or that parents should share with their children about, what they should do or shouldn't do with their phones in case of an emergency?
Yeah, I mean, listen, smartphones is a way of life. If I leave my house without my phone, I feel like, the world's gonna end. I get it. Students have the ability to communicate with us really quickly, which is amazing. But with that, they're going to be communicating with their parents, whatever information they have at the time. Most of the time, it's going to be false information or inaccurate information. So it can actually cause a commotion at the school that's not necessary. So we as law enforcement now have a system in place here in Broward as well, where we communicate with parents during critical incidents, what's going on in real time to try to keep them at ease and keep them informed with accurate information to try to combat some of the misinformation that be out there. But yeah, we have the ability to communicate, which helps, but when the information is false, it actually hurts our response.
And we are all too familiar, obviously, with these tragedies with what happened in Parkland. I mean, it's talking about it, and I covered part of the trial. It's emotional, and I don't even know anybody directly. Probably Garner, is the one who I know most involved with it. 17 students and staff killed, 17 others injured. We know right now that trial. It's the penalty phase of the trial that is happening right now because he's already pleaded guilty. But Eric, let me start with you. Just your feelings. I know this is so incredibly heavy for our community. We've spoken with the parents and the families, but I know you were there that day and you went through that. Can you kind of take us through what you're comfortable with sharing, and also tell us just how you're feeling today after these 4 years and now seeing the shooter on trial?
Yeah, a lot of emotion. A lot of emotion goes into this. We still have the 1200 building where the incident took place. We were really hoping that they'd be able to take it down after this trial comes to an end. It looks like there's another trial that they're going to want to walk the jury through that building again. So, theoretically, we're walking every day by a crime scene, not theoretically, for real. And so that's hard. That's hard. I'm fortunate my class is not exactly next to that building, so I don't have to look at it every day, but it's still there. It's still a reminder of what happened. I could go into that day. I don't know if you really want me to cover too much. Where I was in comparison to that building, I was 2 buildings away. We evacuated when the fire alarm went off. And then when we found out pretty quickly when we entered the hallway, other kids were running back in their classroom. We found out that we were going to a lockdown. Because we were of the distance from the building, we didn't hear what was happening over there. So my kids were walking up to me and going, is this a drill? Is this for real? And I just kept on saying, we practice like we play. We want to make sure that no matter what, we're going to do it like we're supposed to do it. And we did. And then by the time we had collapsed back into my room, we found out it was really happening. I ended up spending most of the evening in a room with the parents that their children never came home, which was difficult. It was a rough night. Saw a lot. I'm not sure how much of that I want to talk about, other than it'll be nice when justice is served, when the trial's over with, and hopefully we can close that chapter. So,
Garner, thank you so much for sharing that.
And it is so rare that you get to this stage, that somebody is held accountable to this degree, and that the community is having to watch kind of the play-by-play. So we appreciate you opening up and telling us about that. I can't imagine, your heart must be beating fast and it takes you right back to that day. But obviously we're having this discussion and we're trying to share your experience so that people take it seriously. And even if the chances are really small, kids need to be aware and know what to do. And so having your first person, explanation and sharing that is really important for people to hear, especially people like me who my kids are about to go into elementary school. And I'm hoping we can somehow wave a magic wand and solve this problem. Chief, I'm sure you have that wand handy and you'll be able to figure that out by the time my daughter goes into kindergarten next year. But I don't mean to make light, but we need to, make good decisions, and having you both here is helping to, share that. So thank you.
If I can jump in, when y'all contacted me earlier about this, it jumped back into one of my other former students that I had, probably about 15 years ago, something. She called me up, and her son was going into kindergarten, and her first question is, should I get him a bulletproof backpack? And it was that was rough. That was rough, because I don't want to mentally be there where that's just here's my school supplies, and that's just, and here's my bulletproof hoodie in my classroom and stuff like that. I don't want to get to that point. Prepare, and pray for the best.
Chief, I wonder if anybody's asked you, if any parents bulletproof backpack?
You cut out there a second. In terms of bulletproof backpack?
What do you say to a parent who's maybe wondering, should I buy my child a bulletproof backpack?
Listen, there's decisions that, are made by parents, and I respect that. I'm a parent myself, like I said before. You have to do what's in the best interest for your kids. My kids personally do not have a bulletproof backpack. I am concerned about the psychological effect sometimes of this, like we were talking about before, like that parent. But you have to balance it out. I think all kids are different. I think kids at 5 years old are different than 10, 15, and 20. I think that the mentality and the mindset of students are different. And as a parent, you have to, make the decisions that you feel are best for your family, that you have to live with at night. At the end of the day, there's no way to 100% safeguard and guarantee safety for every school and every child. It's impossible. And that's something that makes me lose sleep at night, that I can't fully guarantee the safety and security for each child, that I can't go into, hey, Ms. Baggs, your child is starting school next year. Can you guarantee safety? And I say, no, you asked me that question. I can't fully right now. What I can do is build, certain layers of safety and security around our schools that increase the odds of an incident happening in our schools. But even with that said, we still have incidents, but we do a good job here of mitigating and intervening in some of these incidents. We've gotten better because of involved parents, involved teachers, involved people from the community that are sharing information. See something, say something campaign has been a huge hit. We've been able to really put away the cliche of no snitching. These kids know, listen, there's no room for that when it comes to this. We need to communicate certain signs of mental illness, certain times, certain crimes, certain behavior on social media. We need to communicate that, and our kids are doing that, and that's something I'd like to speak about. Our kids are being more responsible than ever. Yes, we have every once in a while a hoax social media threat, but we have hundreds of thousands of students, and we have only a handful of these incidents. So I think our kids are aware of what's going on. They're cognizant, and I don't think anybody wants to die or put their lives in danger when it comes to this type of incident. So our kids and our parents are our best friends when it comes to safety and security. Safety and security, 24/7 operation. I urge parents, search your students' cell phones, search their book bags, search under their beds, search their closets. I speak to parents, and unfortunately, sometimes they don't want to invade the privacy of their kids by going in their room, and that's unfortunate. If I would have told my mother or father to not go in the room, they would have ripped off the door off my room, and I would have never seen the door ever again. And that's the same, the same mentality I tell parents to do. You're the parent, you're paying for the cell phone, you're paying for the TV, you're paying for the mortgage or the rent in the house. You have the right to search every nook and cranny of your child's equipment, their phones, their book bags, everything. Speak to the teachers. It's worth it. They need to get involved.
If I can, I know in our county we try to stress that parents, teachers, students have Fortify Florida, which is one of the apps for the phone, and then the other one that's in Broward is Safer Watch. Both apps, and that way, student can be active. If they see something, they can immediately reach out through those two apps. And same with teachers and everyone else.
And we have the same system in Miami-Dade. Obviously, we Fortify Florida, the statewide system, and Safer Watch is an amazing component as well with the illicit alert, where it's a mobile panic alarm system and also a tip reporting system. So there's so many avenues that we've created, right? Besides 911 to communicate with police department, we have social media, we have apps, we have anonymous reporting systems. So yeah, we continue building those avenues to get as much information as we can, and it's working.
Yeah, I think what's really telling is, even though sure we have these incidents unfortunately are growing or have grown, right? But we also have more ways to defend ourselves and more methods of social media. I want to look at the national map just so we can see where things stand this year when it comes to gun violence in the U.S. We mentioned the statistic from Everytown earlier that so far this year, there are at least 102 incidents of gunfire on school grounds, resulting in 41 deaths, 79 injuries nationally. And Marissa, if you want to talk about that includes in Florida too. So just looking at pulling up the Florida map, even this year, we haven't gone without a deadly shooting on campus. There have been several incidents in Florida, including a deadly incident as well. And then, just to look at where we are compared to 2018, I mean, obviously that national map includes Uvalde from May. That was, wow, just really so horrifying, just like every other shooting, just like Parkland was horrifying. But also, we know that there's been, just this year, I just wanted to mention the bipartisan gun safety bill, which makes some changes there, and that landmark legislation. Again, a compromise between Democrats and Republicans, provides grants to states for red flag laws, enhanced background checks for people 18 to 21, funding for youth mental health services, background checks to include juvenile records. And both of you have mentioned the importance of mental health. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on that. Like, do we want to encourage teachers, students, to speak up about maybe a fellow student's behavior? Where does the emphasis need to be?
Well, when I talk about mental health in my own classroom, I talk about this: see something, say something. But I add another one and I say, feel something. If you're not feeling right, there's just something that's just not good in your life right now, and you need to talk to somebody. Reach out, find those people. All schools have counselors. I know in Dade County they have a certain, I forgot what the exact social worker is with Dade County schools, but we have social workers in our schools that have the tools necessary to help you through that. So before we ever get to the point of, the worst case scenario, I want to help the kids way back here. I want them, to know that hey, I'm not right. Something's happening in my home. That they can reach out. That there's a way for them to stem this earlier than having to go as far as we have.
And Chief, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I echo what Mr. Garner said. There's a feeling, right, that something's not right. It's just as important, and the ability to communicate that is vital. We have a mental health department in our school district, aside from the school site counselors, that really provide that follow-up service to students. The challenges right now for these students, the pressure to perform in the classroom, the pressure to perform socially because of social media is important. Social media, as much as prevalent as it is, it really hurts social skills if you think about it. Students now don't want to communicate. Whether you go to a restaurant with your family, you look at a table, mother, father, and their two kids, and everyone's on the phone. No one communicates anymore. So everyone's on social media or other platforms or on their cell phones, and it makes it difficult. So those communication skills, we're asking students to communicate, yet our daily practice as adults, as parents, sometimes are against those same principles and ideologies. So as parents, we need to sometimes put the phone down for a little while and communicate with our kids, because if you communicate with your children, you're going to see certain characteristics that may not be normal, and you need to address that and be preventive. Another component is it's tough to quantify how many active shooter incidents did our mental health professionals or our school police officers or our teachers prevented this year. We don't know that. We just knew that there was a student in crisis. We were able to render aid, provide services, and the student went on and was able to get better. We don't know what the potential of that student to commit a violent felony was, or a school shooting. We don't know that. So it's tough to quantify it. We can't prevent it. Hey, we prevented 36 active shooter incidents. We prevented 100. We prevented 3. We can't really be specific and give an exact number. So it's difficult to do that. But I know that our teachers, our principals, our mental health professionals, our cops are doing amazing jobs in school in Florida. And the fact that we have a cop at every school in the state, I think, is amazing.
Well, and we actually, Julie and I have a very close family member who recently retired, who was a counselor in middle school for decades, and had shared with us that kids had been coming to her more often and opening up more often. So we do hope, as you all are talking about the mental health issue and kids stepping up, we hope that certainly the stigma that used to be there, and that is still there, certainly to some extent with mental health, that is kind of going away, and it's becoming more acceptable and encouraged for them to not just come out and say if they're having a problem or if they see a friend having a problem, but also, if they do see something. So, as these incidents, seem to be more prevalent, I know that you're also getting many more tips on this sort of thing than you used to. So that's one positive, silver lining, if I can say, about the changes.
And I like that. I like that. See something, not just see something, say something, but feel something, say something. Marissa, sorry, you were saying.
What are some final thoughts, gentlemen, that you may want to share if there was something that you hadn't said already, but just kind of to wrap up the discussion? Garner, I'll start with you.
All right. I want to start off with, I don't know that the chief knows this, but I was on the emergency response team in Dade County when I was a teacher down there. I documented all of their full scale drills, and what they were doing 16, 17 years ago before I came to Broward, they were so ahead of the curve, and they were working so well with all the different agencies, and it was amazing to see. So they're the standard bearer in my world on what law enforcement should be doing. So, I'm sure the chief has done even more since he's been there, but so as much commendations as I can give. To wrap up, I mean, it's difficult. I really think you all covered it well, that you've got to be talking to your kids. You need to watch those changes that may be happening, and some, recognizing that I deal with teenagers, and today they walk in and they're crying, and and I'm dealing with that. But there's teenager problems, and then there's bigger problems, and it's trying to help the parents understand what the difference is. There's still a lot of education to be done all across the board on this.
So yeah, thanks, Mr. Garner, for the kind words. We've been at it for a long time. I was a classroom teacher before I was a school resource officer, and rose through the ranks to be a police chief. So I know kind of both sides, what it is like to be in the classroom. And I'm so grateful that I had that experience in the classroom, because it gave me a unique perspective into school safety. And then as a father, of a 6 and a 12-year-old, and as a police chief, I think right now at this point in my life, it's, all these, components have been thrown at me, but I'm in the right stage of my life to make decisions that on a personal level that affect me and us. But my message is back to the parents. When you look historically at a lot of these perpetrators and a lot of these criminals that have victimized their schools and kids in the most aggressive and egregious manner, there were characteristics there before. So it is preventable. I urge the parents to assist us. Teachers spend an hour or two with these kids a day. That school resource officer may not even know they have 3,000 kids in some of these schools. They may have no interaction with these kids. Parents and guardians and family members are with these individuals a lot more, and the signs are there. It's better to get ahead of it and communicate. The cops in this day and age are not there to necessarily take people to jail or take kids to jail. We're there to prevent incidents and render aid and support and coach and mentor and guide these individuals. So if you don't feel comfortable going to law enforcement, go to a teacher, go to the counselors, use one of the vehicles that we have to communicate with us so that we can provide services. There's so many services out there. These incidents can be prevented, but you have to get out in front of it. You have to be proactive, and you cannot ignore it. And that's my message to parents.
Wow, I really want to thank you both. This has been just enlightening for me. I'm sure I could say the same for Marissa, especially, we're both parents of 4-year-olds entering VPK this year. So they've been in just, shy of 2 weeks. And I'm grateful. I mean, thank you both for educating us on this, what to look for, how to talk to our kids, and when to speak up.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks again, gentlemen. Even though some of it we've heard before, it's so important to hear it again, and to hear it from the parent perspective, is even more important. So thank you both. I hope you have a great
Yes.
school year. I hope it's off to a great start already and just keeps on running.
Likewise.
So thank you.
All right, and
you all
thanks so
for
much.
Mom and Mike.
Yeah, thanks everybody.